So let's talk about the wave. And specifically, I want to talk about the motion of a wave, because basically that's what a wave is, right? It's not a thing. It's a motion. It's movement, And it's a movement that is prevalent throughout all of nature, right? So much so that both the scientific and the religious mind appear to agree on this premise, and that premise being that the wave pattern is a fundamental constant throughout all of the universe. And being a fundamental constant, it exhibits some strange behavior that is oftentimes overlooked, and that's what I want to talk about today. So let's talk about it. So a wave basically consists of three parts. Two parts are easily recognizable and one part is not, right? In fact, the third part is sometimes considered to be both a part of the wave and not a part of the wave at the same time. How is that possible? Let's explore that a little bit. So, most of us are aware that waves move in a downward and upward motion, with the lowest part of the wave being known as the trough and the highest part of the wave being known as the crest. And both of these parts move opposite one of the other, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. However, when these two parts come together, if they are equal in strength and size, if they are equal in every way, then something strange happens. And that is, the two neutralize one another. They cancel each other out. So if we're talking about water, you get stillness. If we're talking about light, you get darkness. If we're talking about sound, you get silence. If we're talking about an electrical current, you get no current, neutrality. And this pattern, this wave pattern, again, is prevalent all throughout nature, including in things like biology. Right? Take two human beings, for example, a male and a female. In order for them to create life, it is necessary for these two equal but biologically and genetically opposite forces to come together as one. And by one, I mean literally they have to become one, in that the male has to insert his penis into the female's vagina so that they become one flesh, androgynous, both male and female at the same time. And this is where life happens. This is where life happens. And the result of this attraction of the two becoming one is the child, which is a carbon copy of both parents, having 50% of the father's DNA and 50% of the mother's DNA. The child is a biological and genetic combination of both parents, yet is neither parent. The child is a living reflection of the day that these two people became one, putting the child in the position of the Holy Spirit. This is the Trinity. Pay attention. And we can go deeper than that. We can take this thing all the way down to the atomic level and talk about the atom itself. Let's talk about it. Specifically, let's talk about the nucleus of the atom. Why the nucleus? Because the nucleus is the only part of the atom that actually exists. The electron cloud is just that. It's a cloud of probability that comes in and out of existence based upon factors that are beyond the scope of this video. Let's just keep it simple. And so let's talk about the nucleus of the atom, and we're not going to delve into the subatomic particles of the atom because that's another rabbit hole. We're just going to keep it simple and talk about the three main parts: the proton, the neutron, and the strong nuclear force, right? The proton, having a +1 positive charge, pushes down on the neutron, which is neutral. It has no charge, and having no charge, it is pushed downward. And were it not for the strong nuclear force, the neutron would be pushed away from the atom completely. But the strong nuclear force pulls the neutron back to the center and binds the two together. The two become one. This is the Trinity. And we can see the parallel between the male and the +1 charge of the proton, because the male is a transmitter. He transmits his seed into the woman. Transmission, repulsion is a positive energy, whereas attraction is a negative force, a negative energy. Think of gravity. Gravity is considered a negative energy because it attracts everything to the center. No? And so the male transmits himself, transmits his penis into the woman. And the woman, being in the neutral position, the neutron, she receives the male. She receives this positive energy in the form of the sperm, the seed, and she carries the child. She carries the burden, right? She goes through the labor pains, which is the painful separation of the mother and child, the separation of the logos from the pleroma, if you're familiar with Gnosticism. And even after birth, the mother is still carrying the burden of the child through weaning and nursing. And the baby, the child, binds these two people together forever. This is the marriage. This is the strong nuclear force, the one that brings the two together. We see it in the nucleus of an atom. And the nucleus of the atom is infinitesimally smaller than the atom itself. To use an analogy that I stole from Robert Lanza, the author of the book Biocentrism, which is a great book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you do so. But in it, he gives a great analogy and says that if we could scale an atom up to the size of a football stadium, the electron cloud would be the entire stadium itself. But the nucleus of the atom would be a fly sitting on the 50-yard line. That's how much smaller the nucleus of an atom is in comparison to an atom itself, just to give us some perspective. And we can go a little deeper because we still have the Holy Trinity, right? We have the proton, which is in the father position, and the father, being in the positive position, sends the sun, the neutron, down to the earth, pushes it downward to the earth, right? Where the sun suffers and dies and then is resurrected by the Holy Spirit, the strong nuclear force, making the two one, right? The Father and the Son become one. The Father, Son, Holy Spirit, proton, neutron, strong nuclear force. And so you have the two becoming one in the Holy Trinity, the two becoming one in the atom, the two becoming one in the human being, and the two becoming one in the wave.